Okay, recording. Okay, second time round. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Sam Kopak, and you're listening to Parkour Coach Companion or watching on YouTube. This is for all you parkour coaches out there, or just parkour people who want something to listen to. The aim is to get some interesting guests on here and hear their thoughts. Today I'm here with Lou Wong. Welcome.
Hey guys.
And I'm very intrigued to hear from Lou. We've been talking a little bit and she seems very, very prepared for the questions that I've given her. Very organized, which is a good sign. So welcome. I wanted to kind of bring you on because off the back of having Kasturi Torchia on my podcast a while ago, and I think if I'm being, I don't know whether this is unfair, maybe it is, but I think she might have been my favorite and most interesting guest that I had on. She really went into a lot of interesting detail about the mental and kind of psychological side of coaching and training. This is something that I want to hear from more. And I thought it'd be good to hear from you because you are part of the same team, Esprit Concrete.
Indeed.
Yeah. So could you, so tell us about that. Like, how did you get involved with Esprit Concrete, and what's your, what are you doing with them right, like at the moment?
Right. Wow, there's two different questions. It's kind of like the blast from the past and propel into the future.
Yeah.
So how I got involved, contact point was they were looking for a performer for a performance project, and it was with the Wandsworth Fringe here in London back in 2018. And back then I knew Georgia, I knew Kasturi, I knew Yao in very different capacities just within the community, as training buddies or friends, but weren't super close. And I have a dance background. I'm a trained performer. So when they had this call out, I was like, hey, maybe I could give it a go, see what they feel, see how I feel about their project as well. And we had a few meetings and then got on board, and it was like a one-off project that we agreed to work together on. And throughout that project, a lot kind of grew within me in terms of being a performer. Kasturi was the one that directed it, and I was performing with Georgia, so it was a duet. We kind of was given the autonomy to figure out what kind of storyline we wanted to do. So we kind of we weren't just performers, we were given like the voice to choose our characters and choose how to build up a storyline. And within that, it was Kasturi's expertise to mentor us both, to have some character development and draw out our personal experiences, even though the character that we both kind of illustrated wasn't a direct life kind of copy of us or carbon copy of us. Kasturi was able to mentor me, mentor Georgia about like, okay, you've created this character, what kind of feelings do you have that are similar? And it was a mental health focus storyline, and I felt that it really brought out a lot of different sides of performance attitude, I guess. And the project was very successful, and afterwards Kasturi asked me if I was interested in joining the team. At the time, I didn't really know what it would mean because the way we work at Esprit Concrete is very different and special, in a way that it's very unique. And when she invited me, I really had to think like, what does this mean? Like life problems or life future things. But ultimately, I felt like it was something that was going to help me grow. And so I said yes before knowing all the things. Like, I think if we talked to Kasturi and Georgia and stuff like that, they'd be like, yeah, you had a lot of questions when you joined. And sometimes the answers don't need to be given just there and then. Says something maybe about my anxiety about the future. Yeah, and I think there was something within me that knew that I needed to progress my training, because before then I felt like I wasn't taking my training that seriously. They probably knew it too. Like they didn't see me too involved in the community. Like I was a part of the community, but I wasn't super. I guess training wise, I wasn't reaching my potential. So they also told me like, hey, like you have this sort of potential that we can see in you. So if you're interested in growing too, then we can help you, and I can help them in a different way as well. So that was the way in.
Wow. Okay. So this performance, was that in front of a lot of people, or?
I don't remember how many, but it was organized by Flora, and she had, I think she was connected with Kasturi beforehand, and her area of work is in the circus. And the Wandsworth Fringe was, I think it was a summer festival, and there were different venues in London, and the venue that we were given was like a circus tent top. So even though it was like performing outdoors, we were. There's a siren. Yeah. Just let me know if my voice ever goes into a siren.
Yeah. No worries. It's fine.
So yeah, we were performing in a circus tent. So that was very interesting because it's kind of like semi outdoors, but semi not, because it's like in a field, but like in a tent top.
Yeah.
And I think there was just a couple of seats, like under 100 people, but we had two shows. I think my memory is fading, but yeah.
Oh, cool. And is that something that came quite naturally to you because you do a lot of dance and a lot of performance then?
I think some parts of me, yes, in terms of like there was a stage, but I didn't, back then I didn't have a lot of experience in circus before. So I didn't perform in a circus tent before, and as well as performing, I think we were given different roles. Like I had my first chance of writing a press review. Is that what you call it? Yeah. So a lot of other things felt like non-performance based, but like I had a little bit of involvement in. So a lot of aspects of that project was new to me as well.
Wow. Cool. And so you kind of were taken in by Esprit, and would you say that you've become a coach for them, or you are coached by them, or is it a bit of both?
What do you mean by for and by?
As in, do you represent them and coach other people, or is it more that they are guiding you?
For some reason, they sound the same to me. Because they coach me to become a better coach and they train me to become a better performer, it'll always be mentored by them. I mean, sometimes I would come up with some creative tasks and ideas, but it'll always be like, oh, maybe you can instill this sort of lesson and this psychological thinking within that. So I feel like it's always going to be Esprit Concrete method in a way through them. Yeah.
And so, how has their coaching style helped you with your own training?
It's helped me a lot because it's helped me realize and put a lot of things into consciousness, especially the things that I tend to avoid. And it's not just like movements per se. I think before I joined Esprit Concrete, I was still looking at movement just as movement. Like, okay, there's this wall run, or there's these type of vaults that can string together that looks quite flowy and dancey. But those are very like on the surface movement based language, and they've helped me just string up a few things within my personality, in terms of how I relate to other people, how I relate to objects, and how I relate to space. And one thing that they really, personality wise, is just to be a bit more assertive, because I care a lot about what other people think, and I really put time into making sure that I don't hurt other people, or if I just being polite and respectful in that. But that in and of itself, being polite and respectful, doesn't mean that sometimes you completely avoid just being honest. And if honesty kind of pricks at the other person and hurts the other person, I've kind of like put that lens there. So there's a lot that they helped me bring out, and that translates to how I approach a wall run, or how I approach a cat pass. So yeah, they've helped me line those things up, the psychological, psychosocial stuff, with my movement. And I'm still learning a lot, because it's a lot to kind of like understand, and then process, and then apply. So yeah, even though I feel like I have a lot of observational skills, like I take in a lot of like attention to detail, there's still something within me that I need to work through and work with them to translate just observing into helping someone with what I see.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned about assertiveness. That's definitely something that I myself have had to consciously work on, as a person and with my training as well, because I feel there are certain movements and certain situations which require like aggression, kind of controlling. So, for example, I was teaching someone how to do a cat pass recently, and there has to be. It's the most powerful vault, in my opinion, and there has to be a level of aggression with it, because otherwise, if you're not aggressive with your hands on the wall, you're not going to clear it, or you're not going to get as far as you need to, or you're not going to get enough height. And for me, that felt, I think that's a good example of where in parkour there has to be a level of like kind of dominance over the obstacle. You have to assert your intention, what you're going to be doing, and it's something that doesn't always come naturally to me, but I'm kind of getting better at, I guess.
I relate to it similarly, but I wouldn't use the word aggression. But you did mention the word intention. I think that's more important than the, I guess, the emotion that you approach the obstacle with. Because I think it's not just about the hands. It's also about what you've decided before you even take off. Like for me, Kasturi helped me with this, still helping. I don't like to take off, so I tend to take off really close to the wall. So even if I have a super aggressive pull, I haven't taken off. I haven't given myself enough space. So if I put all that energy into the pull, then something else is going to happen instead of clearing it. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to pick up on. The intention before you take off is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so, how do you? Would you say that you've discovered parkour and this method through your earlier kind of exploration of dance? Did it come quite naturally to you to do parkour, or is it something you feel are very different in your mind?
It's very different. So there are a lot of different types of dance styles and circus disciplines that I do. Dance styles being contemporary dance, ballet, and various hip-hop styles. The most recent one that I've taken to a huge liking is krump. And I've started to contextualize this with Kasturi, is that with krump, a lot of people think it looks very angry, or it looks very hard-hitting, but actually it's expression. And I was talking to Kasturi the other day, and she was saying that maybe it wasn't the sort of aggression that I wanted to find expression. It just so happens that there is this discipline, and I seem to fit. I really like floor work, so I like to stay grounded, and krump is a very grounded discipline. And so it seemed to me that these disciplines fit with what I wanted and what I needed to express. So in that sort of nutshell, the things are very visceral. Like, I can connect with it in a very emotional way. But difference between that is when I look upon the art de déplacement training that I do, the biggest thing that I see is the situation, the site and situation, and the environment. So a lot of the dance training that I've done is like out in an open space, the floor is flat. With contemporary dance, it can be most likely indoors. The dance floor is probably a very professional, slidey, linoleum dance floor, that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't know.
In technical terms, somebody else would probably know more. So yeah, it's always been me and the floor and maybe a dance partner. So all of those are sort of like animate things. I'm quoting a little bit of Kasturi's thesis that's not out yet, but she shared a little bit of her knowledge with me. She's she's on maternity leave at the moment, but she's taking her time to do thesis amendments for her final publication. But within her thesis, she talks about object relationship, and everyone relates to objects differently, and it's in relation to how they treat other people. And so what I mentioned before is when I was saying I don't like to harm other people, then there's an element of me that wouldn't want to harm other objects. Like, I wouldn't want to break a cup, or I wouldn't want to step on a plant. Which sounds a bit silly, because there were a few times when I was training and Yao and Kasturi were just saying, like, why don't you want to land in the soil, or why won't you want to, step further? Like, sometimes there would be flower beds, and if you I set myself the challenge of like landing on the curbs and stuff and not wanting to step in the soil and flower beds. They asked me why wouldn't I want to do it, and back then I was like, oh, because I don't want to, kill a flower or kill a thing. And they're like, that sounds a bit stupid. Not that killing things are stupid. It's like sometimes you don't directly kill a flower, step on it, like it might just, fall asleep and then come back. I don't really know biology. But yeah, like the consequences that I then take within myself is maybe I stop myself, maybe I, have more shock in my legs, or maybe I don't even make the jump, things like that. So there are consequences to what I decide to not hurt. Yeah, I think, did I go on a tangent there?
No, that's fine.
But yes, back to the visceral experiences is when I'm training art de déplacement, I feel like it's the feelings that happen, the visceral experience is of course within the training, but it stays within me afterwards, maybe because of the training that I'm doing with Esprit Concrete and the empowerment I feel from the Esprit Concrete method. The experience stays, and there's more of a reflective sort of thinking that I have after training, as opposed to after a sort of, they call it labs, or they call it ciphers in street dance. it feels like it happens there and then for me in an improvisation, and then there's less of the essence that stays. But maybe it's just how I'm reflecting. Maybe I haven't. Maybe there's not that sort of community within the dance that I have been doing.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you, in a similar vein to how Kasturi was speaking before, that you'd say that you practice ADD rather than parkour. And how do you feel about these distinctions, the distinction between these words, parkour, free running, ADD? Because I guess my kind of default when I speak with people in this community is that I say, oh, how long have you been training parkour? But I know that it's not as simple as that. So yeah, what's your view on like these distinctions?
So I think the distinction I like, and I acknowledge the difference, because there is a difference between history and time and the people who coined those terms. So for me, it's like a level of respect to whoever came up with the discipline or whoever created it. But it's only because personally, things like identity, things like distinction, and things like heritage are significant to me. Other people's journeys and how they see these three terms might be different. And that's okay. Different to mine, that's okay. But yeah, how I see it is only because identity is special to me.
And so on that, yeah, Kasturi linked me onto you and mentioned that you have a lot of interest in authenticity and identity.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. You can delve as deep as you want into these things because it's all super interesting to me as well. So
yeah. So I try to distill what I mean by identity. I first kind of like thought that it was gender identity, which that in and of itself is a huge topic to me, because I feel like it's still an ongoing search. What is gender? How do I see it? How does society see it? I feel like because that's like a little speck in a general broader term of identity, is I feel like identity is like a sense of self. And within yourself, there are many different strands. And the term authenticity is, I came to a conclusion that I think it's more of a value than an action or things like that. Because I think it's important to...
Excuse me.
Bless you.
That was loud.
If things are quiet around us, other things can be very loud. I remember once I was in Iceland. Yeah, it was very, very quiet in like a glacier area. And the guy that we were with, he pointed out there was a bird that was flying across us. And because it was so silent, it sounded like a mini helicopter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Anyways, back to authenticity. Yeah. I think it's important to be just honest with things, yourself, other people, situations, things like that. But it's very hard. I still find it very difficult because it's because of those so many different strands of yourself, and you're still finding, and it's like different journeys all at once. It's difficult. So I think if there's a very, very difficult strand like gender within the identity, then there's going to be many different sort of like points where you're like, oh, this is kind of like traffic jam. What do I do now? Actually, expanding on that thought, if it is a traffic jam, then there's going to be road rage. And then within your search, sometimes different emotions will come through. But yeah, I had a lot of other things that I wanted to share. I think generally that would be under the question of who am I? And I think it's important to keep asking. And it's at some points in my life, sometimes I'm like, oh, I forgot to ask, who am I? And then maybe a new chapter can initiate a new search. Yeah, and I think it's important. I'm kind of pulling a little bit from Kasturi's thesis again, is she has a section about the contained practitioner mode. And there are many aspects to it, but something that could be interesting to kind of like for me to try and illustrate. I'm hoping to put her words in a useful way. That there are kind of external and internal containment provisions, and she describes it as sometimes we're not, we can't see what is stopping us in terms of like lack of progression. And so sometimes we do need not just asking others for help, but just to be listened to, and to be listened to, and then in return to kind of understand that whatever you're going through, that search is valid, and that everyone deserves to be listened to. It's like nobody too bad to be not listened to, or something along those lines of self-worth. So that's the level of external, I guess, influences. And the internal is like to check in with yourself and be like, just before you do something, or just before you do a jump, it's like you check in with yourself, like, are there any red flags that you're trying to numb in terms of what Kasturi says a coping style. And all that comes in your kind of generation of feeling of your sense of self, like the sense of being worthy to be listened to, and the sense of I'm okay to do this jump because I've done ABC. And I think this is like an elaboration of how Kasturi sees it, the Jungian theory of cultivating both a collective need and an individual need. And you need to find out who you are first to then know your place in a group. So I think that was actually what I was struggling with, or I'm still kind of finding. Before I joined Esprit Concrete, it's like who I am. I still don't really know who I am, but I think the search is more important than the answer. Because I feel like the search is the answer in a way. So, yeah, I think that's my first few takes on identity, and it helps me sort of situate myself in a group. It's not as easy as, you know, they say it in the movies, like you're a jock, you're a geek, you're a nerd, you know, those things. It's much more than that.
Yeah. Here's something. Yeah, I get the impression that from training with Esprit that the sessions are quite different to, I would say, more common, you know, parkour training sessions. You said, you know, they're quite unique and stuff. Do you feel that this isn't necessarily a criticism, but do you feel there's any point where you're training that there is too much analysis, too much thinking? Or do you feel,
I think two things in mind is because we work with Kasturi's therapeutic model of lack of progression, it's psychologically informed. And so there's always a level of engagement as a coach or as anyone that's helping someone progress, is the readiness to change or the readiness to try. And so I feel like if they're if someone's feeling like they are being asked too many things, they can always say no. They can always say, hey, hold on, great questions. I'll just do a few of these. And that takes a little bit of, I guess, sense of self again, like knowing that how much you can take in a certain time. And we always welcome that. Like, we always welcome people to, I think, like, one funny thing that we always have to disclaim at the very beginning is, like, we might ask a few questions and they might sound strange. So it's okay if you just look at us weirdly. We just invite you to think a little different perspectives, and they all, like, everyone has the right to just put up whatever their boundaries are. But it might say something about the person if they don't know what their boundaries are. So that could be another interesting thing for us to explore, boundaries. I know for sure that I need boundary kind of work because of a lot of other things in my personality. Knowing when to respect other people's boundaries and when to respect my own boundaries. Like, am I overworking? Am I thinking too much about the other person and neglecting myself? Am I wanting too much attention from other people and not finding it within myself, like the intrinsic motivation factors? So yeah, that's what I would say.
And do you feel with this method that, do you feel that it represents a commitment to a continual search for progression? What I'm trying to say is, when do you think this method is successful? Do you think that it's successful when you achieve something movement-wise, like physically, or do you feel like it's successful in different ways? Do you see what I mean? Like, as in, if someone had never done this method before, do you feel like it's a success when they can, move faster, further, more powerful, or do you feel it's something different to that?
I think because the method is person-centered, I think it really depends on what the person is looking for. I think we were discussing with Kasturi the other day, and I think she linked it with another bit of me in like my ballet training, is if we search for just one single truth or one ultimate goal, it's not going to apply to everyone. And so it depends on where the individual wants to go in terms of what kind of goals they want to set for themselves. And there could be many successes within each person's goals. I actually don't really know what I'm saying right now. But I think I could bring out one thing that Kasturi said is seeking one truth would probably limit someone's growth. And I guess it relies within maybe something to do with the ability to adapt with uncertainty, because say if it's a movement-based goal, say you can do that jump and you've been preparing for it for months and then you've achieved it, would they be able to do it tomorrow? Would they be able to do it further down the line when they're past 40, things like that? Maybe I'm touching upon longevity right now, but it also depends if the athlete wants longevity. I feel like success is dependent on what the person wants to begin with. I don't think the Esprit Concrete method has one robust goal for every single person in the world, because we ultimately respect that everyone is different. Yeah. And if I think about the workshops that I led that was more art de déplacement and dance focused, sometimes the performers just want to have a good show. And so we focus on how to prepare them mentally and emotionally for stage stuff. Because on stage, sometimes maybe you have to have a lot of trust, because sometimes there might be like sequences that require lifting, sequences that might require a Chinese pole. I had performed on a show once, and the Chinese pole was rigged, and the bottom bit, I don't know the term, but we didn't get one that was drilled onto the floor. I think it's rarely drilled on the floor anyway in the circus world, but it shifted halfway because maybe someone had fun on it, with a lot of excitement, adrenaline, and then we're like, crap, the pole is sideways now. That's a safety thing. So there's a lot of awareness that you have to have on stage. And I think even, I'm going back to the Yamakazus now, I think in their Esmeralda show, I read that, I forgot who injured themselves. This is really bad for me, but someone injured themselves because they did the rehearsed drop, but the lights went off too early. And so they didn't see their landing, and they were injured. And so that's another thing that performers need to be okay with. I mean, not be okay with, to prepare for. And there's a lot of health and safety risk assessments that I feel like the performance world still needs to grow, because there's a big difference between risk assessing as a coach in art de déplacement and risk assessing in performance. Maybe because I was only the performer's role, but I never got to see like a risk assessment as a performer. Or maybe there was a simplified version that was given to performers, maybe because of time, maybe because of scheduling. But I think safety and duty of care needs to really up their game in the performance world, at least from the training stuff that I have been in. Again, I'm not from a circus background, just from a ballet, contemporary dance, and hip hop background. But yeah, I learned a lot about safety and duty of care and risk assessment in art de déplacement, other than other disciplines.
So interesting. Yeah, see, to me, I've always found the idea of performance very scary, and I have spent a lot of my training time training alone, and some of the things that I've achieved, which I've been most proud of, have been by myself. And it's kind of specifically by myself because I actually feel less comfortable with the more people I'm training with, for different reasons. Maybe I need to understand the actual specifics of why I think like that. And I think it probably has something to do with my identity and how that shifts when I'm with other people, particularly with moving. But yeah, that's so interesting. I think a lot of parkour people do, and ADD have got some experience of performance, and I think one thing that I like the idea about it as well is that it adds that layer of pressure to kind of make you perform. It having some layer of pressure, it's kind of like a test, isn't it? It's a test of what you can do in the moment, how you can adapt and things like that. So I'm interested in pressure and how useful or detrimental that can be within practice. So what was I going to say? Yeah, who like inspires you within? I know we've mentioned Kasturi a lot and the Esprit gang, but like who inspires you with your dance and with your training? And yeah.
Before I answer that, I do have a comment about performer and audience, because I think
Yeah, go for it.
There's something in that um, I relate to, because ultimately I come from a dance background, and within the training that I have done within Esprit Concrete method is I've started to realize that that pressure does help me perform, but actually there's more than just that. I started to line it up through the mentoring with Kasturi, is that there's a level of what's the word? I think I hold other people accountable for my success in terms of, if there's no audience, then what's the point?
Mm.
And it's a very dangerous place, or that is maybe a very prime place to grow, to have that question. Is like, maybe I'm on the other end of you, like maybe I hate training alone. And I just wanted to pose your thought with a question, like, would you perform for a camera then?
Very good question, because I have a lot. I've relied on my camera a lot to, when I started training in 2008, and there wasn't any, there was barely a community, let alone coaches, because I'm from the wilds of the north, and there's barely even a community, let alone coaches. So actually filming was something that was part of the culture, just filming, making videos, putting them online. But also, I guess I used it as a way of seeing a reflection of my movement and seeing how I could do something differently. I don't know whether I was performing for the camera, but I would say that it certainly helped me an endless amount, because it meant that I could see what I was doing, and I guess it added a slight pressure of being watched. Like as in, I want to get this good so that I can see it on camera and see myself moving well, which makes me feel good, blah blah blah, that sort of thing.
Kind of become a companion, like instead of a person telling you,
oh,
the camera then tells you, like an actual carbon copy, like, here's what you did. Pull it down, and you're like, oh, that frame is cool, and they're like, oh, I made a face there. Okay, yeah.
And I mean, I still film a lot, and I'm working on making another video that hopefully I can get out at the end of the year. Yeah. So who inspires you then? Who inspires you in your own practice?
It's kind of like a waffly answer, but when you sent me that question, I'm like, God, a lot of people inspire me. So it's kind of everything and nothing, if you want to be a little bit more generalist on it. But I feel like it depends on what I'm searching at the moment, because I do a lot of different movement styles. I do the dance styles that I told you about, but also most recently the circus styles, Chinese pole, and juggling. I say juggling in a ascending tone because I know that I still cannot juggle. But I was working with a really, really cool girl. She's called Lisa Van Brakel, and we perform in that circus show that I was talking about, with the Chinese pole. This is the slanted Chinese pole thing. She's a juggler. She's a Dutch-based juggler, and within the rehearsal and residencies that we were in, she took over one day, or all of us took over one day to kind of like share our disciplines. We have me, the dance and art de déplacement. We have a crumb artist. We have Lisa, the juggler. We have a Chinese pole guy, break dance, and house dance. And so when Lisa was sharing, she said a quote, I hope I'm quoting her correctly: "You don't need to know how to juggle to do juggling." And I'm like, what does that mean? And when she did like go through the day and go through her sort of planned tasks, I'm like, that is right. I don't actually know how to do the 3-ball cascade. I hope that's the term. But she told us that, just experiment with catching and throwing. You don't really need to stick to this form. And I think I resonated with that because there's something in me that links back to my kind of like heritage and identity. So I'm originally from Hong Kong, and in that sort of culture, there's this whole lens of street culture and everything being, I guess, frowned upon. I guess every country has that certain level of frowned upon rebellious people and anti-establishment things. But I can only speak from my experience. So in Hong Kong, things like tattoos, piercings, dyed hair, all fit in with what they see as like society rebels. And when I started to learn ballet. My mom just was asking me when I was really young, like, do you want to go to a ballet class? And then I guess, well, I don't remember this, but I went and I really enjoyed it. And so I thought I was going to go do ballet, but quickly I got introduced to like, here's the female dance and here's the male dance. And I'm just like, what is this? I thought I was going to learn ballet. What's this male and female? And why am I just learning the female version? Why can't I learn the male version? So this whole like pre-written syllabus. And I was like, I didn't sign up for this pre-written thing. And so I think there's this thing within me that was like, there's no pre-written. I don't want to comply with these social norms. And so where am I going with this? I think it's back to art de déplacement. Is maybe it's these disciplines that I find that just fits with who I am and what I want to express at the time. So now maybe I'm very inspired by Chinese pole artists. There's an artist called Sadiq. You can find him on Instagram. And Lisa Van Brakel, she's very creative with her juggling. As well. There's a artist, Czech Republic artist. She's called Yaya, Jaja. Very, very powerful, expressive motions. And a dance group. They're called Tentacle Tribe. I think they're from Montreal. And mix a lot of contemporary dance with breakdance motions, but they work really like seamlessly with each other as a collective. So a lot of partner work, some lifting, and just moving together as a collective. I think there's like this energy that we have, like a synergy. So yeah, that's what I'm inspired at the moment. It might change next month. But yeah.
I just remembered what I was trying to say before. Yeah.
Something works.
Yeah. So we were talking about filming and training alone and stuff like that. And yeah, you mentioned about like looking at the different frames of how you move, like frame by frame. And I do that constantly. So I'm kind of making this video, but I find myself watching back my runs or movements just tens and tens of times. I don't know whether it's kind of like maybe a sort of validation thing as well. Like particularly if I put it out on Instagram, I'll watch it like 50 times, like over and over and over and over again. And I think maybe that's partly me being worried about how it'll be received. And that's, I guess, me worrying about other people's opinion more than the movement itself. But I definitely have a like eternal fascination for how I move and what I could do differently. And yeah, so I don't know whether listeners can relate, but yeah, I hold my hand up. I watch my own stuff like over and over and over again. And it's, yeah, it's just something maybe I've got into the habit of. But yeah, thank you for explaining who inspired you. There's some loads of interesting people in there. Chinese pole is something that just boggles me. Like it's incredible.
It's incredible, yes, but I feel like it's completely transferable if you're into scaffolding work. I know it's the direction. No, English is not my first language. Vertical, yes, it's a vertical pole, and there are different surfaces depending on the manufacturer, but it's like rubber. And you know the Feiyu shoes?
I do.
So a lot of people use the Feiyu shoes, but not a lot of people stick to that. Like, you can do it barefoot, you can wear other shoes. There are these, like, I'm gonna get it wrong, but like Japanese shoes that are like, you have the toe, and then the other bits of your feet is like another bit of the shoe. I don't know the name, but that's just material. But you're just on a pole, and I feel like polecats and a lot of scaffolding work is very transferable. And the rubber is actually a plus because you're stuck to the pole with the friction. So I feel like as much as it looks very different, there are a lot of things that are transferable. Your pulling chain, your spinning chain, and just confidence at height. And it's, I want to say most likely practice indoors, but there are like increasing setups outdoors. We tried to perform it and rig it outdoors for a residency. But there's always like crash mats available in a studio. But there are no crash mats when you are in scaffolding in the streets. So there's a level of sort of confidence that you can get and transfer to Chinese pole, and have a different flavor onto it, because how you would move would be very different to how I would move on an object like that.
Mm-hmm. And so we are getting close to an hour. Well, I wanted to squeeze in two things. Maybe it's we don't have enough time, but I wanted to ask you a bit more about your own practice and what you kind of foresee for yourself in the future with your own practice, but also what you're doing coaching wise, as in, I know Esprit have started coaching again, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I wanted to kind of know what you enjoy teaching and how you teach different people, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. So just going to do a shameless plug. In October, I'm going to be presenting at the Embodiment Conference. It's organized by Rafe Kelly. I think Kasturi is helping a bit on that as well, in terms of getting more speakers on board from all ranges of movement. Awesome. If you're interested in things like embodiment, things like movement application, and just talking about that sort of topic, I think it's a great conference. And the website is theembodimentconference.org, I think.
Okay.
So have a look. It's in October. I'm probably going to share a little bit about the fusion between art de déplacement and dance. I don't have a concrete idea yet. Still need to make it a little bit more concrete. So yeah, that's the plug. But for my practice, I really want to grow more in my research between art de déplacement and dance and circus, because I think there is a lot of research that needs to be done to kind of like connect the sport and the art. And within the kind of like past workshops that I have led, it's for artists and for performers, whether they're starting out as young emerging artists or in practice already. I feel like the process that I have benefited from, and something that I identify myself with in the Esprit Concrete method, could be something that could help other artists, just because I found it helpful. Whether or not they find it helpful, they might find out through themselves. But yeah, I think what I want to do is grow a little bit more of it in my sort of direction through the Esprit Concrete method, to make more specialized workshops for artists and performers in that liking. And I'm still a level 1 within the PK UK coaching qualification, so hoping to work towards my level 2.
Awesome.
I do have to work a lot on, because there's still a lot of stuff that I don't understand, or not confident enough to use that assertiveness and use that authority to become that lead coach. And ultimately, I think within the research that I'm doing, both Kasturi and my family have been sort of like hinting at me that if I'm doing this research already, why not get it accredited by a university or an institution? So
Yeah.
it's staying on my mind for a while. It's a big decision, not going to lie. Maybe a PhD. So just hoping I can make a little bit more of a few steps to have my research more accredited, rather than just like within community-based or just on my Instagram sort of things. And yeah, I think at the heart of it is to share and to connect, because I'm thinking not just the artists within the UK, but in Europe, maybe start connecting back to my friends in Hong Kong, because I do have a few performing arts friends that are still based in Hong Kong. So yeah, I think I see a little bit of that in the future, maybe 5 years time or something.
Well, I think you'd definitely be doing the community a service by publishing your work, because from what I gather, there is not that much out there. It's still, I did my dissertation surrounding parkour in 2016, and I had to really like search for other journal like publications and articles and stuff, and I can only imagine that adding to the pile will be helpful. But I actually then I'm kind of I should practice what I preach, really, because I didn't publish mine, which I probably should do at some point. But
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why?
I'll be honest, I was a bit sick of it. I finished it. I finished university. I had to think about getting a job, and I had to move back home and stuff. And I wanted to see the back of it. I was done with it. Not that it wasn't a brilliant thing to do. It was a brilliant thing to do, but just it was so consuming that I needed a break. And unfortunately, that break hasn't stopped. So it would be cool maybe to revisit and maybe publicize it somehow. But yeah,
Like university courses often are a bit jam-packed. If I'm just speaking from my own experience, I did a 1-year master's, but I felt like it was very, very like the turnover is really quick. It depends on the level and the deepness of your research and how deep you want to discover things. And if it's a very, very informed and deep and also personal sort of topic that you are very invested in, then you would want more time. And sometimes university courses are too short for that. So in a way, I relate. I've only recently been thinking onto my master's as well, and kind of like looking at it in a different way. It's like, oh, maybe I can actually see what I was doing before descriptively and revisit some of those topics, because I feel like they stay within you in terms of maybe a little bit of your research is an intention that you maybe bring to another aspect of your life. But I just wanted to say sometimes university courses are very short for what you want to achieve within it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there. Any more? The stage is yours if you want to plug anything else. Any shout outs or anything else?
We are holding a few. This is not published yet, but we're holding a
Exclusive.
training at the end of this month, and we started up in the 1st of July, and we started at the end of each month we try to hold a training event that is in the style of the Yamakaze, which are Kasturi's mentors, and because they mentor my mentor, there's also my sort of
grandparents.
Didn't come from me. So we want to, build what Laurent says, the body armor, and build strong psychological resilience. And so at the end of this month, it's going to be the Sunday, the 30th of August. We're going to have this sort of like hybrid version. Those in London who can meet in person, we're going to meet in person, and we're going to hold a Zoom on one of our devices and just have whoever wants to sign on in a different place, they can join in. We're going to have a Facebook event up, and we're going to post on our Instagram on Esprit Concrete a little bit more of the details. It's going to be 4 to 6 o'clock UK time. We've had like people sign in internationally, like from California and things like that. So yeah, you're more than welcome to join if you want. So that's a plug. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have seen that you have been doing these Zoom events and other events, and I'm making it I'm starting to travel more at the moment, just because things have lifted, and I'm being careful and stuff, and I'm just trying to reach out to the communities again after a long break. Well, that we so yeah, I definitely want to be more involved with Esprit somehow, and it'd be cool to say that again. Sorry.
The door is open.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Yeah. Well, I hopefully will see you at one of those. It's been great talking to you. Thank you, Lou. And yeah, if you enjoyed listening or watching people out there somewhere, then you can subscribe on my YouTube channel, or you can follow on Spotify, and you'll be updated with all the new guests that I have. I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon, and I've got a lot of recommendations from my previous guests, so hopefully we can have more good conversations. Thank you very much for listening, everyone, and thank you, Lou. I will see you sometime in the future.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.